Hello guys, my name is Anna and I'm from Ukraine, and I have decided I will vlog daily from my country Ukraine since the start of this awful war with Russia. I did not expect it will take me more than a year, but do subscribe to my channel if you're new, because I believe the world needs to know more about Ukraine. And there are many useful and interesting things that we are ready to share with the world. And it is a vlog, so I am going to be subjective but traditionally very honest with you. And today I am a little bit angry Ukrainian because of Oscars 2023 ceremony. Let me start from the very beginning. Of course, I understand that Oscars represent a vision or a position of a certain group of people and does not stand for any global decisions. But we all agree that it is an extremely important informational platform, and people all over the world watch attentively to learn the results, to see how their favorite celebrities look, and just to know what's going on this Oscar ceremony. When I was a kid, I remember it was broadcast on some of our television channels, and we used to wake up at night because of this time difference to watch it online. I mean, simultaneously with the rest of the world, and it was always a big deal. So for many countries all over the world, Oscar is a big deal, and people follow attentively what messages are sent from the stage. I know that our President Zelenskyy addressed the Oscar committee for an opportunity to speak to the world, informing them about Russian crimes in Ukraine, about the situation in our country during war, and to attract global support. He asked for that twice at the beginning of war in March 2022 when it was vital, and now this March in 2023 because the war continues despite all the sanctions, despite all the strength and bravery of Ukrainian people and our armed forces. There are still many battles ahead of us before we finally win. But twice Zelenskyy was denied this opportunity because Oscar is a non-political event that does not want to be associated with any political movements, ideas, and so on. Of course, I have to say that war in Ukraine is not just a political issue, it is a civilizational issue. And on our victory depends not only political situation in Ukraine, but first of all, the survival of Ukrainian nation and people. And second, I guess the survival of normal democratic values all over the world. Because if we fail, it will have like this domino symptom or something effect very quickly. Other authoritarian, totalitarian regimes will attack smaller countries next to them, and we observe that dangers in various corners of the world, and you don't even know what can happen to your democratic countries because Russia is like a parasite, tries to undermine, tries to spoil, tries to influence, and there are various bad movements happening right now in your countries too. So I do think it is okay to allow Zelenskyy to address the world from the stage of Oscar ceremony because it is a global threat. Russia is a global threat, and Ukraine is protecting not only its people. But they've explained it that they are apolitical. And now we learn that the documentary on Russian oppositioner who is now imprisoned, Navalny, wins the Oscar in the category of a documentary film. This is already a political decision. Why? Because the film is dedicated to a political leader, a oppositional leader of Russia, whom people want to see as an anti-Putin, even though he is not exactly an anti-Putin, and he bears lots of his attitudes too. The thing is, of course, Navalny is better than Putin. Of course, he suffers from Putin regime, but he is an exemplary Russian chauvinist who continues sharing empire interests. And we have to be like, between two evils, we don't have to pick smaller. We have to speak about that openly. There are lots of things inherently wrong with Navalny and Russian society too. For example, Navalny supported annexation of Crimea, which is actually the occupation of Ukrainian territory. So we can officially say that he supported Ukrainian occupation back in 2014 and spoke about that until recently. So the documentary is about a controversial political leader, oppositioner in Russia. The film was filmed in 2022, so almost 3 years ago. It became popular only after a full-scale war in Ukraine. Attention that this war drew to Ukraine and to possible Russian oppositioners led to the success of the old, to some extent, documentary. So we may say that we are like playing on the bones or something of Ukrainian people, gaining our popularity that way. And to make it even more shameful, the wife of Navalny, Yulia, came to receive Oscar, and she was given stage to speak. That is like a very political act. And I'm not saying that people don't have right to do so, but why then you deny Zelenskyy in his address to people saying, no, we support Ukraine, everything is fine, but it's going to be political. And then you award the film dedicated to a Russian politician, quite chauvinistic politician, of course better than Putin, but not an example of a democratic leader, honestly speaking. And you allow his wife to come up on the stage and to speak about the situation. And this is kind of this demonstrates double standards. And another thing is that we had a Ukrainian film, also a documentary about children on the front lines that did not win Oscar because like the Navalny film did. I am not saying that Ukrainian film should have won. I am against this, like when countries or people are awarded prizes because they are in hard situation or to support them. No, I'm totally against that. And by the way, sometimes I don't speak about Ukrainian success examples if I believe that this is not because of the quality product or so on or something, but because it was Ukrainian. Of course, people want to support us in that way, and I'm grateful because it is always an opportunity to remind about Russian war in Ukraine and atrocities committed here daily. But I believe that people and films and projects, everything has to win only if they are the best in the competition. So I'm not saying that Ukrainian film should have won, but perhaps it's not totally okay to put them in one competition together. A film about Ukrainian children and orphanages on the front lines, and the film about the Navalny, Russian politician, and then to give award to a Russian politician. It has this like a little bit negative shade in many environments, and especially inside Ukraine, because many people were involved in filming, popularizing the Ukrainian documentary, and it feels like, okay, Russians won, and we don't want Russians to win in any dimension and in any direction. I am trying to understand why this is happening as the war continues, and I'm very much afraid of war fatigue, or that people will slowly start closing their eyes on the crimes of Russia. This makes me both angry and afraid. And I have this feeling, perhaps I will develop it in some of my future videos, I have that feeling that the world needs Russia. The world wants Russia and tries to invent all possible excuses, tries to focus on other options to return it back to active cooperation. And in doing so, we have to remember that it is not Putin's regime who shoots Ukrainian daily. There are hundreds and thousands of Russians who come here to fight, who press the buttons, who send missiles, who produce missiles, and millions of Russians who support Putin and actually brought him to power. And believe me, if they did want to change him, they would have done that long ago. He is a true representative of modern Russia, and Navalny is not that far away from him. he is not focused and does not speak much about war and victims in Ukraine. And he tries to deceive the world by saying that it is the war of the Putin regime and not Russians. No, this is the war of Russians too, because they resemble Nazis a lot. They hate Ukrainians, they support actions, they read some of their comments on publics. They never speak openly about the sins of their own country. They like to rewrite history, and all of them, the majority, like 99.9%, are poisoned by this empire myth that they try to support and preserve in the 21st century. So let me know, what do you think about today's Oscar ceremony? Thank you so much for your support of my channel. Do check our last episode of Russian crimes from Bucha and Irpin, exactly 1 year after these awful crimes that were committed by Russians there. Thank you so much for buying me coffees. Thank you for becoming my patrons and thus supporting future projects. And Slava Ukraini!